Hey everybody, how you doing this afternoon? It's a beautiful day outside today, and I'm in the garage. But I've been outside already, and we've been doing some work on the property. But I wanted to talk to you today about the VE table, because I've had a lot of people ask, how do you tune your VE table? How do you figure out what's right, what's wrong? And it's complicated. And the Killshot makes it even more complicated. And before we get all the way diving deep in there, let me tell you, I am not a tuner. Now, I have worked with the Sniper systems and I've worked with the Phytech systems, and I'm learning this Killshot, but I'm not gonna call myself a tuner of the Killshot by any means. So just take what I say with a grain of salt, you know, and some of what I say may be wrong. But most of it is pretty spot on, I'm hoping. But when we're talking VE table, we're really talking about just how much air your engine is moving, because that's what the VE table is. V's volumetric, E for efficiency. It's just how well it moves air through, right? So the first thing you got to do is be honest with yourself. How well does your engine breathe? If it's a stock motor from the 60s or 70s, it probably doesn't breathe very well. And choosing this stock setting to start will be your best bet. And even if it's a mildly high performance motor, if it's driving on the street, it's probably not ever going to need the race setting. But there are times when the race setting would be appropriate. The motor in this thing idles at about 8 inches of vacuum. And it's a fresh motor, it's good. It's sealed up tight, it doesn't leak, there's no vacuum leaks, it doesn't pulse because there's a bad valve or whatever. That's just what it idles at because of the camshaft that's in it, all right? So starting with the race was where I chose. Now, I've adjusted the VE table so much, it more or less looks like the medium one, the not stock, just modified. And that's because the tables are adjusted rich on purpose. Your motor is safer being rich than it is being lean. But let's get back to the table itself. That table happens to work in conjunction with your AFR table and your Learn table. And I'm going to go over to a whiteboard and draw out a little bit, and maybe you'll understand it better that way. So hang tight. I'll be right back with you. All right, we're over here at my whiteboard, so let's get this started. We're gonna be talking about your AFR, so your air-fuel ratio, of course. We're going to be talking about volumetric efficiency, the VE table, that all-important thing, your ECU, your O2 sensor, and let's throw in Learn, and up here we're going to put injector pulse width. This is your fuel injectors. All right, now I'm going to start with AFR. And ACES uses a simple setting and a table setting. And table setting is where you make your own table, AFR. Simple is where they tell you what it's going to be. And they tell you that at an idle, it's going to be 13.5 to 1. And at cruise, 14 to 1. And at wide open throttle, 12, I think it's 12.5 to 1. Now, that's not a horrible set of numbers, but why would you idle rich? Most modern engines today can idle at 14 or 1 to better. Stoichiometric, which means perfect air-fuel ratio, just the right amount of fuel to burn. Let me put it this way. The right amount of air, the right amount of oxygen to burn all the fuel is actually 14.7 to 1. Your idle can be as close to that as necessary, or as your engine will take, and still idle smoothly. An automatic may need to be a little richer. A manual could possibly even be leaner. But this is rich, and unless you're running pretty inefficiently, you probably won't need it this rich to idle. Cruise, I want my cruise to be as close to stoichiometric as I can, maybe even a little over if my engine will handle it without overheating or pre-igniting or pinging or anything. And I want my wide open throttle to be rich enough to get full power, to burn every bit of fuel it possibly can, and actually still to have a little fuel left in there to cool my cylinders and keep pre-ignition and detonation from happening, and to keep that film of fuel on my intake runner right by my valve. That's a whole different subject, but I want it rich, okay? And the only way I'm gonna know exactly what wide open throttle AFR I should use is by reading my plugs. There's just, I mean, if I don't have a dyno, I've got to read my plugs. I got to see where that fuel ring is down there on that porcelain, and that will give me a good idea of what my wide open throttle AFR should be. So, but right now, this is what ACES is telling it to do. And let's say our engine is now running and we're idling. So we've got 13.5 to 1 being commanded by the AFR table. Let me take off the other numbers so we don't get anybody confused. Okay, here we go. All right, good, engine's running. ECU says, I want to know what my air-fuel ratio should be. So it looks over here, and it says, I want things to be 13.5 to 1. So it looks up here to its VE table, and it says, how much air are we moving? Because your engine's just an air pump. That's all it's doing is pumping air in and out. And it looks at the VE table, and the VE table says, I'm moving X amount of air. And it says, okay, for your ECU says, okay, for X amount of air, I need to tell the injectors what their pulse width needs to be. And it's going to be in milliseconds. So a couple of milliseconds, 2 or 3, maybe at an idle. And it pulses your injectors, and they squirt the fuel in, and bang, you know, everything goes off. So then it looks down here to your O2 sensor, and it says, how did I do? Did I get my air-fuel ratio right? And your O2 sensor says, nope, screwed up. 12 to 1. Rich. So your ECU says, crap, I gave it too much fuel. Let's look over here to the learn table and tell the learn, hey, I put too much fuel in. Can you take some out? And the learn says, sure. And it tells the injector pulse width, I need less fuel. And the injector doesn't open for quite as long. And then that cycle continues until we're pumping out 13.5 to 1 at an idle. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's pretty good. And it works the other way too. If this number had been something like 15 to 1, the learn would have said, or the ECU sees it didn't give it enough fuel, it's burning lean. It tells the learn over here, hey, I need to add some fuel. So the learn says, sure, I'll make the pulse width longer. And this is for that one specific little box in your VE table that is commanding 13.5 to 1 AFR. Now your AFR table, if you're idling, that's what your VE table and everything is going to be doing. Now when you're cruising, of course, it's going to switch to the 14 to 1. And if you've done your own AFR table, hopefully it's closer to 14.7 to 1. If your engine can handle it. And then this cycle will just continue over and over again. And you can just let it happen. You don't need to tune this if you don't want to. You can just let the learn try to cycle this around. But the problem is that all your other tables, or not all, but most of your other tables in ACES, especially Killshot, is looking at this VE table. So your enrichments when it's cold, or your reduction or when it's hot, or whatever, when it's under load, they're all looking to do something with this VE table. So if these numbers are wrong and you're using the learn to compensate greatly for an incorrect VE table, that's when things get messy, right? Things don't work very well. So we're using the learn to find out what percentage of fuel that we need to add or subtract from this VE table. And when we get this VE table so that we're only adding or subtracting less than 1%, then we're getting this thing dialed in, and all those other tables that are our startup table and our load table and running hot and running cold, and all of those are going to be more accurate because our VE table was more accurate to start. So that's why we're going to do this. You could actually eventually turn off the learn table and things would function once this is tuned just fine. And in fact, I would recommend that. Once the VE table is tuned in, go ahead and shut off your learn. Or turn it down to just 1% or something of learn. You can even go, if your O2 fails, you can turn off closed loop, and all this will work right here, happily together. In fact, it actually won't even care what this table says, really. It's just running the injector pulse width to match the VE, and things will all be good. But until that point, until you tune this, you need all of the rest of the things functioning. So we're going to go in to the computer. We're going to look at our AFR. And I like to build my own table for AFR, matching whatever engine we're working with at the time. We may build one, a table, and then we'll show transferring learn. It doesn't actually just transfer. You have to take the percentage and move it over here, and we'll show you how to do that. And then it's just a matter of time. Driving your rig, letting the learn tell you how to change this table. That's all there is to it. I'll show you how to do it. All right. Well, here we are looking at an ACES Killshot software screen. And I want to get out of this table for just a second. Come up here to my custom items. And look at that setting. Now, if you're running the simple table in ACES, or just a simple setting in ACES instead of table for your AFR, your idle is going to be specified here, and this is under the fuel tab and under custom items. Your cruise and your wide open throttle. And remember, like I said when we were at the whiteboard, these are going to be exactly what it's doing at idle. As soon as you come off idle, it's going to jump to this number, and as soon as you go to a wide open throttle, it's going to jump to this number. And that's not terrible, but it's not the best. And these numbers are not what ACES had set. These are what I've put in to this this tune here. And this motor is a little bit wild. It's not terrible. You can be street driven, but it doesn't idle at all that great. But anyway, this is just what it would do if it was set simple. And simple is set in the configurations. No. Yes, here we are. Configuration item, target air fuel type. This is where you would, when you get it, normally it's set to simple. That's where it is normal. And the numbers that I just showed you in the config, in the custom items, is what it's going to look at when you're set to simple. But I always like to do a table, so I changed it to 2D table. And then I go down and create a table. In the target air fuel ratio under 2D table that looks something like this. Now, here we have our RPMs across the bottom and our manifold atmospheric pressure across the top. And this is, you can call this load if you'd like to. And this engine idles a little bit on the rich side, and it actually idles at 800 RPM, which isn't reflected here. And you can change these numbers, by the way. If you go into your X point, You can change these RPM numbers. I could knock out the 300 and the 600. I could start right at 800 and bring it higher or lower or do whatever you want. But anyway, this table looks at these two numbers here when the engine is at 800, because that's right between 600 and 1000, and it what is it called, interpolates, it averages these. It goes right between them. So my engine is idling at 800 RPMs at about 13.9%. I shouldn't say my engine, I should say this engine. And that's fine. And these numbers are pretty much all the same. And because at an idle, there's no load. I mean, the upper numbers really don't matter. But then as I start to accelerate down here where there is no load, things just increase in efficiency, as my VE table does, and I increase the air-fuel ratio to closer to stoichiometric. But if my load goes up as we're moving down the table, I need to richen it up in order to compensate for that extra load that I'm putting on the motor. And this motor cruises at between 2,000 and 2,500 RPM on the freeway. And this is pretty close to its cruise area right here. And that's why it's pretty close to stoichiometric, because there's very little load when it's cruising, very little load. And this engine doesn't overheat, and it's not having a problem with detonation in this area. So we're running kind of lean. Not lean, but we're running we're getting all the power out of it that we need to. Now, if you step on the throttle and put more load on it, then we got to richen it up so the numbers go to richer as we go. And as we go up in RPM, we're also getting richer because, one, there's less time to burn the fuel. There's less time at a higher RPM. And I want to make sure I get enough fuel in there to use up all the oxygen that's in there and get the most power. So I'm getting a little richer. And I'm also putting more and more load as it's going this way. So I get richer this way too. And I'm going all the way up to my 12.5. Now on this engine, we haven't made some full power passes yet, so I'm not sure where these numbers are going to end up. We may end up richer, we may end up leaner, I don't know. It'll be some full power passes, it'll be reading the plugs, and then we'll adjust these numbers appropriately. So idle area right here. Basically, this is my idle area, right in this area. This is my cruise area. And this is my full throttle area. So you can see when you look at that, the changes that are made. I idle a little rich. This is an automatic too, by the way. So I'm idling a little rich. It just helps it smooth out that idle a little bit. I cruise it right at stoichiometric. This is my best fuel economy, basically. If I lower these numbers and make it richer, I get less fuel economy. If I raise it, I get more fuel economy. I want as much fuel economy in this area as the engine will take and still transition well both ways. This is a steep, getting kind of a steep drop, but that happens. And then here's my full throttle. So you can see the AFR table that I built pretty easily here. Now let's look at a volumetric efficiency table, because they correlate, they work together. This volumetric efficiency table is what percentage of air that my engine is moving, that it is capable of moving. I keep saying mine. Let's just say this engine. All right, race volumetric efficiency. And it doesn't matter whether you're using mild or stock. It doesn't matter. What we're looking at is the fact that our engine becomes more efficient as the RPMs go up. I'm going to go back to race since that's what this was set at. But the volumetric efficiency, it actually moves more air than its size suggests right here in this box, at least according to this table. And that's simply because of the ram effect of the air moving through the intake manifold at such rapid speed when the bores all the way open, the throttle bores, and that air just cramming itself in the cylinder when that intake valve opens up. It's not relying all the way on vacuum, it's actually relying on some ram air effect to increase its volumetric efficiency. But what the point is that it increases from idle up to full throttle in efficiency. So we need to correlate this increase with our pulse width increase. And I'm not going to teach you guys how to change your pulse widths because the learn table is adjusting that, and you're going to change it by transferring learn to this table. So now I don't know if this if this tune has a learn in it. Let me check. No, we're all zeros. It doesn't have a learn. So let me grab a table that has learn, and we'll show you how to transfer. Here we go. I found a table that has some learn data, so we can look at that. Now this is our fuel self-learn table. And all of these numbers that are identical, you can ignore. That's just an average of all the rest of the numbers that are written here. But in the spaces, such as we see right here, or here, we see that the learn is taking a percentage of fuel away from the injectors and what the volumetric efficient table is calling for. So in these squares that is taking fuel away, the volumetric efficiency table is assuming the engine is more efficient than it really is. And in these areas up here, where it's adding fuel, it sees that the volumetric efficiency table is not as showing the engine as efficient as it really is by these percentages. So what do we do with this knowledge that we now have? We're looking at this table and going, well, this table isn't right according to the learn table. And this would be super easy, except the map scale and the RPM scale for the VE tables with ACES don't match the map scale and RPM with the self-learn table. Now you can adjust the X point and get those to match somewhat, but this table is always going to be the way it is. So you have to do a little bit of work in your head to get them right. Now, probably the easiest way is to copy this whole table. Just highlight it, copy it, put it on another screen, half your screen, put it on half the screen, and put the VE table on the other half. You can use the snip tool, whatever it's called, and cut this out and put it down, somewhere where you can see it or print it out. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at these numbers and we're going to say, like, okay, let's pick an easy one to work with. At 1,000 RPM, at 70 manifold atmospheric pressure, 1,000 RPM, we are minus 4.87%. So we're going to jump over to the race table. Remember, 1,070 and this number, almost 5%. We're going to jump over to the race table at 70 and 1,000, and this is the box we want to work in. Now it was 4.89 or something, that percent, so we're going to right click it. We're going to change our values, and we're going to offset by a selected value, and we're going to do a percent. And remember, it was 4.89%, right? And it said we needed to take away that amount of fuel, so we're going to minus 4.89. Let's see if I can move this. Yes. So watch this number up here. It just reduced by that percent. So this box is tuned to match this box right here. We actually took a little more fuel out than needed to be. And the same will work with going the other direction. Let's look at a box that's easy for us to match. Here's a box at 80 and 1500 RPM on the learn that says we need 2.5% more fuel. So I go to race at 80 at 1500 RPM. I need 2% more fuel. So I right click. I go down to offset select values. I need 2.5% more fuel. Let me put in the percent marker. Which I think I forgot to put the percent marker down here when we did that one at 1000. Yeah, right here. So we may have to go back and look at that one. But 2.5% is what I need to add here. So we're going to offset it by that. There's 2.5% more in this box here. And we do that through the whole table. That's why it's a good idea to just print this out, have this sitting in front of you so you can look at it, go through it. Here's another one, another example, 2000. Let's see, at these are really close. These are less than 1%. But just for an example, let's go to the 2000 at 50 box, and we're only 0.38, so 0.4% too much fuel. We'll jump over to the race. We'll go to 2000, go up to 50, left click it, offset select, come back here, offset select, and we're going to minus, was it minus? We're going to minus 0.4% out of that box. Why do I have a comma there? Looks like I got a comma. Let's get rid of that. There should be a point. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And we're going to see that box move by 0.4%. It won't move much. There we go. So that, in a nutshell, is how we're going to tune. We're going to drive our car till we fill this table up. This is a very short reading here. This was probably, it was a very short drive, I'm sure. It didn't cover much. There's not much idle. It was probably moved before we had it. Even before it went in closed loop, it probably was out on the road. And we didn't go full throttle on this engine. So, but we can see we definitely need to richen it up here. And you can do a blanket enrichment. I can look at this and say, oh, in this upper area, 100 to 90, I'm going to be really 1500 to 2000 RPM, 85 to 100. I'm going to add 3%. And come over here, race. I've already forgotten what RPM we were at. Were we at 2000? 1500? 1500. And I'm just going to highlight those. I'm going to take them across. Let's go even further. Offset that whole select value. We needed to add about 3%. I'm going to put 3%. And boom, we've jumped those all up 3%. So you can do it that way, save yourself some time. If they're not all, if they're the same, like I could highlight all of these right here and go 4.5%. Be pretty darn close. Might even grab in a few more of them. And so I would go to my other table, start at 700 to 1000, or as close as I get, 60 to 70. $60 and $70, and I don't have 700 here, and the engine actually doesn't even run at that level, so I just grab those two, or decrease them the amount necessary. We already did decrease this one, and that's how it works. Just constantly back and forth from your learn table to your to your VE table, regardless of which one of these is. Tune this sucker in, and then do it again. Don't rely on your very first learn table. Do it again. See how close you are. See how close you came. And just keep working at it, guys. You'll get her done. Yeah, if you have questions, please leave them down below. Comment about it. Tell me how wrong I am in what I'm doing. And you can use the heat map if you want to. It makes them easier to see. When, in the end, when you're on this table, your volumetric efficiency, you can graph it if you want. And you can see really easily where our peaks and valleys are. Now this is because we just added fuel here. So that's that. And it's probably going to need, from what we saw on that other table, it's probably going to need fuel all the way along here. So eventually, this whole section is going to be higher, and it's probably going to equal this one in this engine. So guys, yeah, comment below, guys and gals. Let me know if this helps. Let me know if I should redo it, if it's confusing, or whatever you've got. All right, till then, take care of each other. Later.